everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to our regular meeting of the Conservation Commission. The first item on the agenda is our approval of the November minutes. And because Lynn and Rick Stewart, are not here, both you guys will be voting. So does anyone have any edits to the November minutes? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the November 13th, 2025 Conservation Commission meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you. Great. Moving on to our first wetland conditional use permit application, 65 Onyx Lane. Is someone here to speak to that?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm a contractor representing Groundworks New England LLC. So our client at 65 Onyx
Can you
Lane.
just say your name? Sorry.
My name is Beth Murch, M-U-R-C-H.
Thank
So our client at 65 Onyx Lane reached out to an engineer on their own. It was established that they have some settlement on one side of their home. The company that I work for, we provide a service doing push piers to support the structure. We're not lifting the structure, it's solely to support and prevent future settlement. The property is, the area that we would be disturbing is 27 feet away from the nearest wetland edge. The amount of digging that we would be doing to get to the bottom of the foundation for piers is 2 to 4 feet at most, with a 2 to 3 foot wide trench. The soil would be replaced and compacted upon completion. Do you folks have any questions for me?
Yeah. One of my questions was access.
Mm-hmm.
How, what type of equipment and how are you?
Because the excavation's so small, we would be doing a hand dig.
Okay.
But we do need an excavator on site. It's a mini excavator, it's 6 feet wide, because that's what provides the hydraulic for the pier.
Gotcha. Okay. Other questions from the commissioners while we're looking at this?
I have a
Go ahead.
couple.
Yeah.
So I don't know the topography of the area, but is it sloped down to the wetland from the house?
I know it's level, the lot's level.
It's leveled, so there just usually is some sort of stormwater control, but I don't know if you've had that with other sites where there's a potential during a rainstorm, even if it's level, if it's only 27 feet to the wetland, that some of the dirt excavated and stuff where, would run off into that area. How much?
I would expect zero runoff. I was personally on site, this is my project, and it's not that evasive that it would create some type of runoff, even if we had a torrential rain. I mean, it's pretty far to that wall away.
Yeah.
I would expect none.
So but you'll have piles of dirt. You haven't had to.
Yeah, we put the dirt pile right next to where they're excavating, yes.
Okay, usually it'd be like, putting not necessarily a silt fence, but something in between, so, but you've never.
20 years, never did it, because I've never had the scenario, even this particular foundation is set really high, but even when we've done, where we've had to dig down the 6 feet, I've never been required to have any type of silt, because if it's a sock or whatever it is, like when they build a house, we're not excavating like that.
So there's not gonna be big piles or anything?
No,
like
I
that?
mean, I would expect the dirt pile to be, yay high by yay big.
Okay.
And there is 12, I believe, 12 piers, yeah.
And is this a one-day
No,
Project?
it's scheduled for 3 full days.
3 full days?
Yep, and
okay.
they're 3 consecutive days in a row.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just one follow-up.
Sure.
You're not changing the drainage around the house at all? You're not doing
No,
any
this isn't
infiltration
it.
trenches?
No,
You're
no, it's just
supporting-
solely to support the foundation so it doesn't continue to settle.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Seeing none, are we ready for a motion?
I will recommend approval of 65 Onyx Lane for a wetland conditional use permit.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? I feel like it's fairly straightforward. I mean, I don't know if we've seen this before, but, you know, they're doing, I think, the least amount they can to better their situation, in my opinion. I know there was a little concern about erosion. Doesn't sound like it'd be a big deal, but I'd also be open to doing a little bit of erosion control if the commission finds that necessary.
I wasn't on the site walk, but I'd be curious to know from
I
you
don't
all.
think there was a
Oh, there
site
wasn't
walk.
a site walk.
No.
Okay, well, I wasn't
Yeah.
on any
Yeah.
of the site walks though. I'm just curious to know like why there's this settling. Like, is it just the house or I don't know, maybe.
What causes foundations to settle?
No,
So-
no,
oh, okay.
no. More specifically, is there a reason that you've identified at this site? Is it just general or is there some?
They
like-
hired an independent engineer, so they were familiar when I went out to do my evaluation. When I did my elevation survey, which is a box laser in the home, the home has settled the 1.5 to 2 inches on that side. You know, that's as in-depth as a survey that I have done, but.
So I guess not really unknown, but
Yeah, like
not
if
that
there
much
was-
settling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if the city had, you guys been out there at all, or?
No, we have not been out there for a site visit.
We have the permit through the city already. It's just this one that was,
Yeah.
because of the
The
conservation.
conditional use permit, yeah.
Right, yeah, so the process for this is you go to the Conservation Commission to get a recommendation, and that then goes to the planning board, and they make the final approval on your land use permit.
Sure.
And then once that's approved, then the building permit kicks into its final stage. So it's not approved at the building permit stage yet, but it's at that final
Okay.
stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's this building permit that I have?
No, I think you guys already started it. That's kind of what triggered us to realize that
Gotcha.
there's
Okay.
a proposal in the wetland buffer.
Got it. Okay.
Any further discussion? Does anyone want to add any stipulations or conditions?
I don't know if there's a way, I mean, I don't want to have them have to do BMPs if they don't need to, but just to confirm the elevation, there's no sloping or anything like that between now and the, I don't know if there's a way. And now in the planning board,
Would a photo help?
maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I could pull up the photos that I took of the site.
Were there photos in the original application?
I feel like there were photos in the original.
Let's check.
Or there at least
I know
was
when
a-
we do the permitting, we send all the photos over.
Yeah, I mean, it was on our agenda last month. and
Yeah.
I feel like we saw, there was a little bit more in the application last month, I feel like. Let
I
me
think
see
it's
if
the
can
same
find it.
one.
Is
There
it?
wasn't photos in this one, just kind of the contractor application.
Oh, maybe we pulled it up on MapGeo. That's probably what it was, and we could see.
Oh, yeah,
The
we can do that
area.
again, if that's
You wanna do
easier.
that?
Yeah, let's try that.
We're just gonna pull it up, an aerial,
Oh, you're fine.
so we can kind of just better see what we're looking at since we weren't out there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, judging by the aerial, I would think they're sloping back down into this, because the wetland on Edmund Ave back here is a low spot off the road. And this was the main wetland that the buffer is on.
And that's the side that's being stabilized, is closest to that wetland off of,
Right, so Edmund Ave is right behind 95, and if you ever go down to that chiropractor office that's on that road, it's right across the street from that is a huge wetland system. And then Onyx is the little neighborhood across from that. So right in here is the
would
wetland.
it be sufficient if rain was in the forecast to just even tarp minimal piles until it was complete?
Yeah, do dust control.
There's also a 6-foot stockade fence. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Are you
Wow.
inside that fence, or are you?
Yeah. So a fair amount of the work is on the back side, but there is some,
On the
there you
front?
go. There is some work on that right side.
Yeah. I mean, it shows maybe a minimal.
Minimum
Slope.
sloping, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
hard
it's
to-
probably gonna be a problem, but,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, the tarp's not a bad idea, just to tarp the area in the right-hand corner if
Okay.
if there's,
If it
Mhm.
rains in the forecast
Yeah,
during your
that-
3 days, yeah.
Sure.
we could just put that in as a,
Yeah, all right, so we'll add that as a condition, just to tarp if rains in the forecast.
Okay.
But are we okay with whoever
Yep,
made that and
I'm
seconded
fine.
it? Okay.
Oliver, yeah. Okay.
Any further discussion? Are you all right, Barbara, with that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, are we ready for a vote? All in favor? Great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, you
Thanks.
too. There was a request for postponement for 2299,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm glad you
Lafayette?
brought that up. Yeah, so I emailed about this a couple days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, but 2299 Lafayette Road went to the Technical Advisory Committee last week, and there was a bunch of changes that were requested there, so the applicants decided that before coming to us, they're gonna just make sure that their application and plan is up to date, so they'll try to come back in January with a new plan.
Do we need to make a motion, or,
And we need to make a motion to postpone.
okay, would someone like to make a motion to postpone?
I will make a motion that we postpone 2299 Lafayette Road to the January meeting with their most updated application.
Perfect. Second. Great, all in favor?
All right.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the Dredge and Fill State Wetland Bureau application for 0 and 12 Ruth Street. Someone here to speak to that?
Good evening, everybody. Jay Obie, TF Brand, Certified Wetland Scientist, Lead Environmental Scientist at TFM. Here on behalf of the new property owner at 12 Ruth Street, Carrie McCool. We're attending this meeting to speak to the wetlands permit application that was submitted to DES for the purpose of constructing 2 new, very small docking structures on North Mill Pond. The docking structures will be used so they can access the high tide when the tide's available, when the tide's up, and do so in a manner that avoids direct impacts to the more sensitive fringe salt marsh area. Proposing to use more of an innovative surface through flow decking. That way we can allow a greater amount of sunlight to pass through the structure to ensure that the salt marsh vegetation can continue to survive. And it's really as simple as that. It's really in terms of providing greater opportunity and access to the public water body.
All right, questions from the commissioners?
I know these people very well, so I have to recuse myself.
Okay. I'll start. Do you know, what the depth of water is approximately under the float at high tide for each dock?
Well, there's,
I know the high tide
yeah,
is variable, but
in this situation.
mean high water, I guess.
Well, let's start by me just clarifying that in this situation, they're more in line with a docking structure you'd see more on a freshwater, on a freshwater body. There's no float system here that or gangway that, you know, that rises with the tide. In terms of elevational information, if this makes sense to you, if you look at the profile drawing
I think we have it up on the screen there.
from the substrate, I can grab the mic. Is this on?
So,
Hopefully.
On?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Good enough? I mean, from the substrate here, we're looking at a height of roughly 6.9 feet, and mean high water is roughly in this zone here. We intentionally pushed the structure out beyond the limits of the salt marsh. We intentionally had our surveyor go out and delineate or pick up the edge of the salt marsh area to ensure that we can be out beyond that.
okay, so if there's no float, the structure is never gonna be like right at water surface level, right? Is that? So,
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, the water typically is not going to come right up to the edge of the surface in terms of, you know, in terms of access. We may build maybe like a little ladder or something on the side. I could see there being a
yeah, so,
kind of, you know, if mean high water is here,
yeah, like what's that delta right there between the top of the structure and the surface at mean high water?
roughly, say 3 feet, 3.5 feet in this area,
So what,
depending on tides, you know, variable.
so I guess I'm a little, like, what's the use going to be? Like, I understand recreation, but like, are we talking, I'm assuming not swimming, because just the nature of North Mill Pond, but like paddleboard, kayak, what are they trying to?
Sure, the
Get down there.
new property owner envisions maybe utilizing the end of the dock to sit and read a book, having grandchildren access a paddleboard, kayak, fish at the end of the dock during high tide.
Okay.
I think it's a great way to, I mean, it is a public water body after all. It's a great way to get folks, young ones, off their handheld electronic devices and out playing and outdoors. If I was a young kid, that's where I would want to be.
And can you talk about why 2 docks?
Well, the adjacent lot is a separate taxable lot. The property owner has only owned each of the 2 lots for 3 days. This was the proposal put forth by the prior property owners. He and his significant other haven't really discussed the full plan for the future in terms of the adjacent lot.
So the intent would be because, a dock is being built, that lot would be buildable in the future.
Potentially, but again, the property owner really hasn't explored that avenue yet.
It's, I don't know that I mean, I know that area a little bit, but is there public access around there for North Mill Pond? I thought there was a park not far away and some other places for recreational use of the pond in that neighborhood. Am I misunderstood?
That's correct, I think so.
I'm not familiar with any parks on the water, but,
Pull up map, Geo,
Yeah,
to get a good aerial of that area.
say there's McEachern Park is right next door, and this, the lot that does have a home on it right now is, next to a conservation piece that borders McEachern Park. And then on the other side of this is Monteith Street, and there is, public access for like kayak launch at the end of that road. It's kind of easy to, it's less steep to get down. I don't know if
That's
this
what
is-
I have mapped
like
Geo
over
up,
here
and
is
that's what
Monteith.
that's Monteith, okay.
Yeah, in McEachern, they usually launch kayaks, and for the regatta, they launch different things off the corner of the park
Can you
property.
just zoom out where that is in relation to our, so it's,
Yeah, it's
okay,
these two.
got it.
Sorry, that's so small up there.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there existing structures like this on North Mill Pond right now?
I haven't taken a hard look. There may have been, looks like there may be remnants of one to the east of this. That's in a, it's rather fallen apart of sorts, but it jumps out at you when you look at a Google Earth image as possibly being one.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
You were speaking about 3 days ago, they purchased it, so the application is under the original homeowner's name before it changed hands?
Yes, this is the original permit application that was submitted by the previous property owner. We're going to apply for a name change shortly on the application.
So you have an agreement to do that at this point with the, so
It's-
we're looking at an application that is from the previous homeowners, but it's technically, you're gonna change it to the new.
There's, my understanding that there's language within the purchase and sales agreement that, yeah, sure.
You'd have to come up to the microphone, so you're on the record, and state
introduce-
your name.
How do you do? I'm Kerry McCool. I'm the brand-new property owner. And so, yes, as part of the PNS on this property and the closing documents, this permit process, if you will, the language is transferred into my application from their application is included. And so we'll be doing what's necessary to change the application retroactively, I guess. But the intent here is to be a good steward of land. You're talking about the park next door, and oh, geez, can you go over there and put your kayaks in? If somebody were to walk down, they could see that area is gravel. There's no seagrass there. Where the people tromp back and forth through there and walk their dogs and launch their kayaks, it's now a gravel beach. It's not what the intent of this is, to preserve the land, which is what I want. So I'm trying to be a good steward to give access to my family and not have an impact on the marshland.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can keep going until somebody else
Yep.
has questions. So can you describe how this is going to be installed? Usually, you would install it from the water, but you can't bring a barge in. So what's the intention?
Yeah, within the application form, there's a detailed work construction sequence narrative. But the intent is to bring a very small mini excavator that has what we call the vibratory hammer to install piles. First putting in construction matting out to the furthest extent, the end of the proposed dock. Driving those piles with the vibratory hammer. It's a relative, I think you've probably heard other people speak to this. It's a super low impact system that really just jiggles the pile into place to refusal. They're cut to size. In terms of erosion controls, it'd be surrounded by hay bales in this case, and then work backwards and remove the matting and construct, and then once the piles are in, then construct install the through flow decking.
Thank you. The time of year? The time of year you're gonna do it?
No time of year restriction. All the work can be done in the dry. And that's another piece that's added in the work construction narrative, is to ensure we started at low tide. In terms of screening for the site, obviously it's a incredibly developed area. No hits for threatened and endangered species either.
And the reason for doing this access at the intersection of the freshwater and the salt marsh there, and not going over the freshwater instead of the salt marsh?
Well, if you go over the freshwater as well, then you'd be impacting a greater area of resources. So this is the least impacting alternative, is to minimize the length of the structure over the regulated resources.
So, I mean, typically, normally, the salt marsh is a more valuable resource than the freshwater wetlands. I don't know if you have any information on that in the application. I apologize if I missed it, but.
No, yeah, we certainly recognize that a fringe salt marsh in general is in terms of functions and values, is probably the higher functioning resource. But regardless of where you put the structure, I mean, you have to cross the salt marsh area, and in this, where it is here, it is crossing it in its narrowest area, and offers the least impacting practical alternative.
Yeah, from the diagram, it doesn't look like it's the narrowest area of the salt marsh. It's the narrowest area of the combination of the two.
Well, I mean, we want to minimize our impacts to resources also. So
Okay, thank you.
even though the freshwater wetland is lower functioning, lower value, we can still have a net reduction in impact by having the dock placed in this location. Anything else?
We did have public comment written that was sent in. I don't know if anyone's here to speak for this application. Okay. Just wanted to check before we went into discussion. Do you have another question, Barbara?
Yeah, I have more questions on access, I guess, the need for this. I don't really see where you guys are going to be putting a float out to, I mean, there's some information in the application about the need, but it's sort of like boat access, but you can't have motorized boats in there, so we're talking just kayaks and paddle boards probably, and as you say, maybe people will climb down to them. I'm not really sure why there's no float in a ramp, but it does limit the access. Is there reasoning behind that? And is there any more to speak to the need of doing this in a pond?
Well, I think the need is pretty simple. It's it's a public water body, and the property owner, the previous property owner and the new property owner has an interest in and accessing that public water body and being able to get out there and enjoy it when the tides allow. Either by way of a kayak or paddleboard, or maybe even fly fishing at the end of the dock during high tide. Seems like a reasonable thing to do, and in today's age when kids seem so prone to be on their electronic devices, it seems like it just seems like a really cool thing to do, to allow for that public access.
And the reasoning behind not having a float and a ramp?
Floats are generally looked at as being, more impactful on the mudflat area, and then having to install float stops, additional piles in the mudflat to prevent the float from laying on the mudflat itself. So this is a means of avoidance and minimization.
But rather than moving the whole thing back and having a float that's removable and a ramp that's removable.
No, moving it back wouldn't allow you to avoid impacts to the salt marsh. The intent is to crawl over the salt marsh without walking on it, impacting it, crushing it in, still allowing it to grow under the through flow decking, and then simply get to the end of the salt marsh and get on your paddleboard or kayak and zoom around.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Are we ready to make a motion and go into discussion?
I do have one more question,
Yeah,
just for
go ahead.
why Jay's still up there. You guys are applying for 2 waivers, right? Jay, maybe you can explain that a little bit, how that works on the applications for the waivers and the process. Because we're looking at an application that you guys have put together based on the assumption that the waivers will be part of this, right? Otherwise, everything will change. Is that accurate, or is that?
Not really, no. You're right, we have submitted rule waiver requests. The DES Wetlands Bureau administrative rules allow you to waive certain rules when strict adherence to a rule really doesn't provide a lot of practical environmental gain, and there's even a hardship of sorts. In this case, technically, we're constructing residential tidal docking structures, and under the DES Wetland Bureau's rules, they would want the piles in the structure to be much higher up, so that there's more light below the pier to allow for the salt marsh to continue to grow. In this case, in this environment, we don't need that pile height to also to stay above ice flows and ice jams and things of that nature. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a huge, ginormous pier that you would typically see in more tidal, more rigorous tidal environments, like on the Piscataqua itself. So we've asked for a rule waiver to decrease the height of the pier, and we're demonstrating that through the use of the through flow decking, there is no adverse impact to the environment, and there's less of an impact in terms of impact on neighboring viewscapes.
And the Harbor Master one?
Yeah, we have sought to waive that as well, because this area isn't navigable. But we have also forwarded the plans to the Harbor Master, the Peace Development Authority. That has been submitted to the Harbor Master already, though.
Okay, thank you.
Someone like to to make a motion? Even if
Is that it?
it's Just, I
Okay.
think so. We good with questions, at least for now? Yeah, I think we're all set for
Okay,
right
great.
now.
Thank you for your time.
Someone like to make a motion even just for discussion purposes?
Well, to be candid, I appreciate the homeowner's effort and thoughtfulness in the design, but this one feels really hard for me. Where, you know, the application is for a dock on a property that the use is yet to be determined. There's a lot of public access in the near future or in the near vicinity. I think that, you know, to your point about people kind of areas where people have access, the salt marsh tends to get more degraded even with best intentions because people don't always strictly stick to the dock or the area that's intended for their use, and that can often cascade out into the salt marsh that you're trying to protect and maintain. So, yeah. So for me, I mean, at this point, I'm not sure that I would vote to recommend approval, so that my motion would reflect that. But I'm happy to make that motion unless other commissioners have other thoughts.
Why don't you go ahead and make the motion, we can discuss and we can always go
Okay.
from there.
So my motion would be that we not recommend approval for 0 and 12 Ruth Street for a dredge and fill major impact State Wetland Bureau application this time.
I'll second it.
Second it, okay, discussion. Just speaking first about the dock on the undeveloped lot. You know, I think that's not for a purpose right now, except to enhance the land value, presumably if something does get built and, you know, for those future homeowners, which may prove to be difficult based on the history of this property with the Board of Adjustment and when DES first granted the application for that 12 Ruth Street to be built, what was supposed to happen on that secondary lot there. So I feel like that dock alone would need to wait until something happened to that parcel to determine that it made sense to be built. And for the first, I'm just calling them first and second, the first dock, the one on 12 Ruth Street, you know, for me, again, the nearby public access, I think is important here. That's what seemingly most of the residents of the North Mill Pond are using, as nobody has docks in this area. And so I don't know, it's a tough one for me, but it's kind of where I'm leaning at the moment.
I agree with everything, the reasons you guys have stated so far. In addition to that, and I might have more, but really the need for this just doesn't seem to be there. We're talking about building two very large, at least one very large one, and another one on a pond that has no existing docks at all. And I mean, there's reasons for that, and part of the reasons are due to the fact that there is not really a lot of opportunity to do boating in there. The water definitely and the sediment have been in the past contaminated and in cases still are. So it hasn't been something that people want to go out and go swimming in or fishing in. And when they access it, you really kind of need to be careful. But if somebody wants to do that, that's not necessarily the reason not to do it. But The other part of it is the navigability of the pond. The low tide, most of the pond is mudflat other than a very narrow channel. The access at the end of that larger pier is not really going to gain much time on the pond other than, putting water in during the really high tides. So I don't really see that need actually demonstrated here. And of course, you guys have stated that there is other opportunities to access it nearby. The other parts of it, the impact to the pond is going to be great as far as the mud flats are, and really the area where a lot of the wildlife do access for food sources, and especially on, during the migratory season. So that is something that a dock or a pier will really impact a lot, whether it's used or not used, but especially if it's used. Yeah, I can't think of all the other ones right now, but I think you guys have stated a lot of the obvious.
And these are all things that, I don't know if you guys read the public comments. We had 2 abutters, 3 submit public comments, and they also submitted reports that have been done on North Mill Pond, which I don't know if you took the time to read them or have read them in the past, but I kind of am on the same wavelength as some of the public commenters in terms of having this be built.
Yeah, I would say that reading that public comment really, I think, enlightened me a lot about the sensitivity of this ecosystem and the fact that there are a number of people willing to come up and remind us of that. I think just sort of sent me over the edge and reconsidering how I felt about it. And then also just looking at the fact that there aren't any other docks here, and maybe this would inadvertently set a precedent for future applications to, well, I want to get my family out there also. So being that there is public access already, it seems, although it would be, I fully understand why it would be nice to have that on your own property because of the sensitivity of this ecosystem. It makes sense to just not add any more of those by special permission. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to make a motion? So
One last question, I'm sorry.
you need to come up. You gotta come up to the.
We do have a motion, second on the table.
So you guys, obviously, I'm 3 days into this thing, and you know the salt marsh better than I do, obviously. But so if you were sitting in your backyard and the water was essentially where you're sitting now, and you had your grandchildren here, and there's some grass in between here, would you just take the kayak off the shelf and then drag it through the grass and put it in the water? Or would you take it out and put it in your car and drive around the block and then go to the dog park and put it in there? The answer is obvious to me, that I'm going to walk through this, my backyard. I mean, that is our backyard. And so to prevent the erosion and decay of the backyard in a resource which is obviously important to here, I'm trying to put in a structure that allows us to have access to this resource that it's gorgeous. Let's face it, it's why I bought the place. I love it. I'm a good steward of land. I have other waterfront property that I brought in the state to say, hey, we need to hire somebody to watch the dock to make sure milfoil doesn't come into this water body. That was 25 years ago. We still don't have any. That's Bow Lake. But anyway, so to not have this, I think, is adversely affecting what you're trying to protect. And I am a good steward. I'm willing to go the next step if there's something else that I could do to help. For example, at our lake, we contributed, put a bunch of bat houses up, just because the bat population was collapsing. Let's do what we can. I'm willing to have somebody from UNH come out, look at the property. What could we do to enhance this, not just build a dock? So you're not talking to a developer that wants to come in and just throw up condos like that are going across the waterway from me. So talk about a view issue. I mean, come on, it's not even close. So I really would like to have you give it a second thought.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. The motion is recommending denial, which means if the motion passes,
It's denied.
it's denied. We don't have to do another.
If
Right.
it's tied,
I
we
always
do a
get these
motion
confused.
to approve or postpone. I
Okay.
guess we can't postpone.
Okay.
Are you,
Sorry,
are you sure?
for
Pe-
postponement.
Yeah.
Because the
We could postpone.
No, I wasn't, I was thinking the motion to deny, it always seems like we have to do another motion after that, but
think
we
it's
don't
That's
have
if
to.
it fails.
I think it's the motion to
It's when you-
recommend fails, then we have to do another motion.
Right,
Okay.
that's what we usually,
But the
See
motion
more
on
of.
the table is to deny.
is to deny. And if we vote yes, then it's denied. If we vote no, then we do another motion for either approval or a postponement.
So, may I ask a follow-up question to your question? The motion needs to have a recommendation or a letter sent with it? So do we come up with the conditions or the reasons for the motion? The reasons, I guess, would be now or after we vote?
Yeah, we usually send DES letter of decision that just states recommend, approve, postpone, deny. We could add a bulleted list of reasons why underneath that, if that's what people are open to.
If we were to do that, when do we kind of figure those out? I mean, I obviously kind of talked about all of them, but actually having the bullet points, is that something you can just draw from
Our conversation.
our conversation and we can just,
Yeah, the
look at
motion
it.
can be recommend denial with the reasons listed by commissioners during the discussion period, and I can pull those all out instead of us having to sit here and redo them all,
okay.
if that's,
And I can look over it again to make sure too, if you want
yeah,
to
yeah,
incentivize.
okay. If people are comfortable with that, then that's an option.
And also, adding the public comment letters, the letters that were sent through public comment through this process, attaching them to,
The letter of decision?
yes, the letter of decision to the state.
Yep, we could do that,
Okay.
if that's included in the motion, or amended in the motion.
That can be part of the motion.
You good with that, Brian?
I'm good with it, yes.
I'd have one more addition to that list of things that I brought up during the discussion, but not specifically, is the least impacting alternative based on the freshwater and salt marsh impacts and the location of the larger.
Freshwater and salt marsh impacts.
Everybody's okay with, you guys are okay with that?
So looking at a different location,
Yeah, but
To minimize.
it's not,
the saltwater, salt marsh impacts.
yeah, well, actually, just stating that it doesn't seem to be, I don't know, accommodating the least impacting, least
Least im-
impacting.
Adverse impact.
I do have a question. This application, I've stated my reasons why this one I don't feel like I could support. If the homeowner is motivated, he can always come back and maybe consider some of our concerns and reapply with a different plan, correct?
To the state?
Yeah, like if he just focused on his property and not the other lot, and maybe considered some of what Barbara said about where it's located and those kinds of things, and are we shutting the door, sort of?
Not shutting the door, so this is still gonna go to DES unless it's pulled as an application to the state, and the applicant then reapplies with something different. If that doesn't happen, then it goes to the state with our recommendation. They either approve or deny it. It will probably be a couple months, I would think. But if if it's denied at the state, I'm not sure procedurally if they can reapply with maybe a slightly different plan. I'm not sure of the state rules for that, but that might be an option.
Brian?
I was just gonna add, I think the rest of the commissioners said the thoughts that were in my head. I guess I'll add, I think it might have been rhetorical, but there was a question about what would the commissioners do if they own the property. I live a block or two away. When I want to use the pond, I do pop in my car, I drive around the block, and I choose not to disturb the bank resources. So I guess that's my answer to what I would do.
Are we ready for a vote? All in favor to deny? And you're recusing yourself, okay.
Yep.
Thank you, okay. Thank you. Next order of business is the dredge and fill major impact for Marcy Street. Someone here to speak to that?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vincent Regagliano with TF Moran, and I'm representing the City of Portsmouth. So this project has two elements. It's a pier and riprap repair, and I will start with and this is at Prescott Park. I'll start with the riprap repair. Over time, the riprap has sunk and settled and actually spread across the area where the low tide sits between the piers, and that needs to be repaired. So the process of doing that is we're going to remove the riprap in that area that you see.
Sorry.
And it'll be stored up in the uplands for later use. And we'll lay down erosion fabric followed by 3 to 6 inch erosion stone, and then 2 to 3 ton toe stones will be placed at the bottom. Above that, we'll reuse the stone that's there existing. It'll be put back in place, and if needed, 24 inch minus riprap will be placed. The geotextile erosion fabric is to allow drainage and just, to prevent erosion and make this a really solid piece of riprap that's there to protect the shoreline for the public park. And then I'll touch on the pier repairs. And this is the southern pier that's adjacent to the Sheath building at Prescott Park. Exactly. And so those outer 7 fender piles will be replaced, and that's just for protection of the pier, to make sure nothing hits it or ice development along those lines. And the 2 center sister piles that are new piles to this pier will be placed. The reason that it's not just replacing that one center pile because its location on the joint, and if that's removed, the pier can be compromised. So that needs to stay, and there'll be 2 new piles on either side of it. And all these piles will be placed in with a low impact vibratory hammer. And to get access to that middle one, the boardwalk will be removed, and then it'll be placed in down from above. And this will all be done by barge, and the riprap area will be done from the uplands. You can see the blue access way. To touch upon erosion control for the pier, all work will be attempted to be done at low tide, in the dry, but if that's not feasible, a turbidity sleeve will be used. If you go to my details plan, you can see the sheet 3. Thank you, it's just to the right. Right, that's the temporary turbidity sleeve detail. So what it is a 1/2 inch thick metal sleeve goes around the proposed pile, and it goes just into the substrate a little bit, and then the water that's in that sleeve gets pumped out. So then the pile will be driven or installed and vibrated in, technically in the dry in that area. So there's no turbidity released, even though it's minimal with the vibratory hammer. And for the riprap area, a turbidity curtain will be used to kind of just isolate that area. And in the uplands, Silt socks can be used as well, but that's to prevent turbidity in the water. And the machinery used for the riprap area will be a Mechalak and a skid steer. And it's a pretty simple project. It's just to, make sure it's safe to use for the public at Prescott Park. I know it's a heavily used area and people love it in Portsmouth. And I know that in the RFP sent out by the city that in 2023, a survey was conducted and there was several failed components, and that's just addressing these. And the components that I addressed today is what we submitted in the NHDS wetlands dredge and fill permit application. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners?
Oh, sorry. Did somebody else want to go? Go ahead.
Just curious when you would anticipate performing the work.
It's a permit pending approval, but as soon as possible. So this winter into spring, but it would like to be done before, access in the summer is going back out. So this winter.
I can't remember if it's in here, I apologize, but the material for the geotextile fabric stuff?
Yeah, just a woven geotextile fabric. I don't have the exact manufacturer model, but it's just a standard marine geotextile fabric that's placed underneath the toe stones.
Yeah. Most of those are plastic, aren't they?
Right.
Are there other options? I feel like we might have had some
I know those
applications.
widely used just to ensure that everything is held together in place. I don't know of alternatives, but on all projects that I've been a part of that consist of shoreline stabilization, that's what's used.
I know farther along the edge of the riprap, there's concrete blocks that are kind of on top. Are you proposing putting any of those around this area that's being replaced?
No.
Okay.
That area is up ahead, like kind of where that curve starts.
Yeah.
The area we're in is only riprap today, and we're replacing that as is.
I have a question about, I know that there is a master plan for this, and I don't really know where we are in terms of implementing that. Is this part of the master plan, or is it more or less shoring up a failing condition, and then it may come back and we'll do something else?
I do not believe it is part of the master plan. I think this is just a part of shoring up, keeping public safety. Okay, I thought he knew the answer to that completely. Okay, that's what I was aware of. Thank you.
So I'm just curious how long this work has before it might need to be done again, or if the master plan has some impact on that, if we end up doing more work.
Yeah, I know that
I can speak to that. Thanks. So the master plan has been modified since it was originally approved, and modifications or changes to these piers are not part of any future anticipated project. So this is really to extend the life of the existing piers and to make them safe.
Can you just put your name on the record and?
All right,
Sorry.
Peter Rice, Director of Public Works.
Any further questions? You have one, Barbara?
I was just going to confirm you're not taking any rocks out at all?
The rocks that you see there, I may misunderstand your question, but the rocks that you see there, they're temporarily coming out in order to put down the geotextile fabric, the 3 to 6 inch erosion stone, and then they're being reused again. And then if anything is needed on top of it, because some could have, completely gone into the resource, they'll be bringing in 24-inch minus. Does that answer?
Yeah, would the intention be to have the vegetation on the rocks preserved? It's not preserved, but.
So I don't think I understand your question
Like
fully.
rockweed?
Like rockweed and stuff
Like
like
algae?
that. Yeah,
Yeah, the rocks won't be cleaned or
right.
nothing like that. They'll try to be put back in like a angular fashion and such to allow similar regrowth.
Thank you. Thanks.
There are no further questions. Are we ready for a motion and discussion?
I will make a motion that we recommend the State Wetland Bureau application for the dredge and fill major impact for Marcy Street.
Recommend approval?
Yes, sorry. I never forget that word.
I'll second it.
Second it. Discussion?
Nope.
Is someone else? I
Yeah.
mean, it seems,
It seems pretty straightforward.
yeah,
Yeah.
not doing anything more than just shoring up what's there, protecting it. Oh, I also, actually, one quick question.
Of course.
Was this a rumor or that something hit the pier? Is that why it needs to be
I-
replaced?
I have not
Some of
heard
the
that
pictures
rumor.
look not so great.
I think it's just, from what my
Yeah,
assumption
like
is.
that.
I think that's just deteriorating wood over time with weather
Okay.
elements, and
Okay.
things just need to be repaired. That's
Mm.
center structural.
Okay,
But I agree that it definitely needs to be done and
Yeah.
ensure public safety. And
okay. All right, are we ready for a vote? All in favor? Great, thank you.
thank you all for your time. Have a nice night, guys.
All right. Okay, we're on to other business.
And that's me. Okay, so not too much, but thank you to those of you who filled out the doodle poll. There were a few of you who did not. You know who you are. But anyways, it looks like the majority of us can make, obviously, the regular meeting date time. So if we just stay a little later next month, even if we might not even have to. We might have a short meeting and just do something from 5 to 6 or whenever people finish up. And if we maybe do want to keep talking and we want another work session, we can do the February meeting date, which was another date that everybody can make. So we'll just put it on as other business to talk about zoning ordinance edits. That was easy. Okay.
Is there any prep we need to do before that? There's a little
Any
bit.
prep? Oh, good question. So I sent around the red line version that we worked on a couple years ago. I think really just kind of doing some homework over the next month, kind of looking at the ordinance or Article 10 and the whole ordinance if you want. And the definition section is pretty important too. And just if there's anything that, any application requirements that you think is too strenuous on an applicant, or if there's something you think is missing, something that we regularly maybe ask applicants for that you think should become a requirement. Any criteria that you think are maybe too vague or people aren't usually able to meet, things like that. Just kind of looking at Article 10 and what your reaction is when you see applications come before you, and how maybe we can better that section to make it not easier for people to get applications, but easier maybe for the process and maybe more clear on how we say yes or no to things. But yeah, just a little homework, little research.
It's kind of prep for the meeting with the.
Right.
with
So the whole reason this started was because the planning board chair, Rick Choman, wants to do a sit down with us. I'm not sure if he wants the whole planning board to sit with us first, or if he himself just wants to have a one-on-one with the whole commission to kind of go through his personal ideas for edits. So I think the planning board wants to make that an agenda item this year to edit Article 10, and they want our input on it. So we're gonna try to get rolling on that. And by this year, I mean next year. 2026, a month away.
So just to clarify, Kate, for next month, if it's on other business,
Yeah.
are you thinking about, like, if we can extend the meeting at all, if we need to, or just still sort of normal?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on how many people show up and if everyone's willing to stay late. If it's something where we start talking at like 5 or 5:30 and by 6:15 we still have a ton of stuff left to talk about, maybe we just say, let's continue next month and do it again.
Okay.
Or if people want to stay till like 7 or 8, and they're feeling really gung-ho, we could just kind of try to bang it out in one work session. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see how we
As
feel.
long as we have like light meetings,
Yeah.
it's not that bad to just do it, like, we
Yeah.
could do it now. I mean, not that many people
Yeah.
are here, but I know we didn't plan for that. I don't know. That's my preference usually.
Okay, yeah. Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
Oliver?
can you circulate the red line again?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah, so come with ideas, or if you have none, come to hear some. All right, and then a couple other things. I forgot I was gonna try to bring it to this, but I'll send it out as a PDF that Barbara was thinking about. Great idea. The 2026 meeting calendar for us.
No.
2 dates are a little wonky because I think we're getting pushed out because of city council. So I'll create a little PDF calendar for next year and send it to everybody soon, so we can get those written down. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is Stuart. Just a heads up, he is heading to France or Switzerland for the next 4 months. So we will see him in April, if he didn't already update everybody. Just thought I'd say that. So we will probably be using some alternate votes for the next few months.
Nice.
Ready to exercise your right.
Yeah.
All right,
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Good work.
well done.
Way to hold your ground.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.